death penalty may seem like a horrific torture, but did you know that it's actually available in 30 states? The death penalty is an issue that has America divided. While there are still many supporters of it, there's also quite a large amount of people that believe that it should be abolished. I believe that the death penalty should be legal in all 50 states. There are many reasons as to why I believe this, including deterrence, retribution, and morality, and because there is no racial discrimination. The killing of a criminal is not something that should be a bad thing, and let me explain why. Studies show that the death penalty is a deterrent to crime. Because of this, many feel that capital punishment is a good idea, and it becomes obvious when you look at statistics and numbers. The use of capital punishment greatly defers citizens from committing crimes such as murder. Many people's greatest fear is death. Therefore, if citizens know that death is a possible consequence, they're less likely to perform such actions. By executing murderers, you prevent them from murdering again. Ernest Van den Haag, a professor at Fordham University, has studied deterrence closely. He makes a point saying that even though statistics aren't conclusive, because people fear death, especially death inflicted by law enforcement and scheduled by the courts, people are less likely to act towards prison guards and other inmates. Certain crimes require stronger punishment, and capital punishment is the ultimate deterrence. In the state of Texas, the only offense punishable by death is a capital felony. A capital felony is defined by intentionally or knowingly causing death to an individual. Some may argue that there's not enough evidence to use deterrence as an argument. The reason is that most executions take up to 15 years to be carried out. This can influence the effectiveness of deterrence because punishments that are carried out swiftly are better examples to others. There's a lot that goes into somebody getting sentenced to capital punishment, and a lot of the time the governor of the state will give the inmate a 30-day reprieve, or the inmate can request a reprieve, or petition to be sentenced to a lesser punishment. But is it morally acceptable to execute a person who committed a capital offense? The 8th Amendment of our constitutional rights states that no person should endure cruel and unusual punishment from the federal government. The death penalty has quite a lengthy history with the Supreme Court in deciding whether it is constitutional. It was initially banned in 1972, then reinstated in 1976. In the case of Furman v. Georgia in 1972, a man by the name of William H. Furman was convicted of murdering a homeowner after getting caught in the middle of an armed robbery. In the process of trying to escape the home, Furman's weapon was fired. The court invalidated the existing death penalty, stating that it constitutionalized cruel and unusual punishment and was in violation of the 8th Amendment. Specifically, the court upheld Georgia's new procedures, reasoning that Georgia rules reduced problems that were seen in earlier statutes. The U.S. Supreme Court was split 5-4 in rejecting the imposition of the death penalty. In the 1978 case of Gregg v. Georgia, the court refused to expand Furman and upheld that the death penalty was not unconstitutional as it served the purposes of retribution and deterrence. The jury found Gregg guilty of armed robbery and murder and sentenced him to death. The armed robbery conviction was dropped, but the state upheld the murder charge. Gregg challenged his murder sentence, saying that it was cruel and unusual punishment. In a 7-2 decision, the court upheld that the punishment of death did not violate any constitutional amendments. In 2002 and again in 2008, the Supreme Court ruled that one may only be sentenced to the death penalty if the crime committed is proportionate to the sentence. Otherwise, it would violate the 8th Amendment. The Supreme Court looks at 3 factors to determine if a crime is proportionate to the punishment: the punishment's gravity and stringency, how the jurisdiction punishes other criminals, and how other jurisdictions punish the same crimes. In all of the crimes above, the courts made an individual decision and provided a fair ruling, ensuring nobody's constitutional rights were violated. It is true that there is disproportionality when it comes to race and class. It has been proven that minorities and those on lower income levels are overrepresented on death row. This is not due to discrimination, but rather a higher rate at which these groups commit crime. It has been argued that poverty breeds criminality. If this is true, then it makes sense that those at lower income levels would be more commonly sentenced than those at higher ones. It doesn't matter what race or economic status a person is. If a person is guilty, he must receive the appropriate punishment. The death penalty is an asset to society. It deters potential criminals as well as serves retribution to criminals and is in no way immoral. The arguments against the death penalty often do not hold up when examined more closely. It is important that the nation is united on this issue rather than having some states use capital punishment while others do not. The death penalty can be an extremely useful tool in sentencing criminals that have committed some of the worst crimes known to society. It is imperative that we begin to pass legislation making capital punishment legal throughout the United States so that justice can be served properly.